Perfect. So we'll take a bunch of questions, and there we go. All right. So who's curious? Yes?
How'd you come up with your name?
Oh, Bubbly Dynamics? Yeah. Well, the first building, the Sustainable Manufacturing Center, is actually right by Bubbly Creek. And the name was never intended to see the light of day. I just needed to come up with a name to take ownership of the building, which I bought for $220,000, the first one, totally derelict. And you can't walk into a bank and get a loan for a derelict building. It doesn't happen. And so you have to find alternative structures for financing and for doing these things. And so, so I needed a name. And a friend of mine and I were sitting in a cafe and said, what's the silliest name we can come up with? Okay. And then it stuck. And the great thing is that I can walk into the county building or city hall and everybody remembers, oh, the bubbly guy, you're the bubbly guy. So anyway, it's worked for us. So, back there, yeah? Yes?
Here we go.
Was it gradual? Was it you woke up one day? Was there an event? Like, how did you decide to just go for it?
Well, I've had a lifelong interest in industrial history of Chicago, and have studied factories and railroads my whole life, basically. And I was looking for a way to do more than just study it. I wanted to get more involved. And so my day job consisted of staring at a computer, and I needed to do something different. And so there was no one event. I did end up going to a Green Drinks a long time ago, very, very long time ago, and meeting a lot of other people that thought the same way I did. I was raised by Depression-era parents who saved every plastic tub, and my father rode a bicycle everywhere, which I do also. And I thought he was really weird at the time until I realized there's a reason he does this. And so all of that, despite my resisting it, kind of got baked into my personality. And so I started to say, okay, there are not only environmental reasons to do these things and to use salvage materials, but there are also economic reasons to do that. And I figured out how to work with scrappers and with a drywall distributor that was paying to put thousands of sheets of drywall with broken corners into landfills. So he's paying for dumpsters to dispose of this stuff in the ground. I said, that's completely stupid. Let's figure out how to use this instead. And so that was kind of the beginning of it. And then I realized there's so much more material out there. And so in terms of construction materials, I made a deal with a dumpster company where they could use my loading dock apron to stage boxes that came out of big downtown projects. And I could take stuff out and I could put stuff in. And we got bundles of conduit, refrigeration units, spools of wire, incredible value that was all going into landfills. And I realized that's everywhere. So, yeah, here.
What's your research process for vetting all of these different projects as different as like growing mushrooms to growing proteins?
It started out as we need money bad and you want to rent space? Sure. So in a derelict building with no HVAC and you're willing to do that, okay. So, and then it has become rigorized as we go, where we start to look at the business owner's intentions primarily. Are they going to work and play well within our community? And do they know what they're talking about? Are they actually skilled? Because there are a lot of people that talk a lot, and a lot fewer people that actually do. And so we try very hard to find those doers and plug them in some way. It actually doesn't matter what the food business is for the plant. It can be anything, because then it's a new challenge to say, oh, well, okay, we could try to put this piece together in this link. So.
This month's theme is end.
Yes.
Is there a time that the plan almost didn't work or almost ended? And if so, what happened?
There were lots of times that it should have ended. And I, borrowed money from friends. I did whatever I had to do, and stayed up all night working hard to make it go through, and that kind of perseverance is often what's required on these kinds of things. And so, you know, our goal is to end waste, and we're a long way off from that. But the plant is not intended to end at any point. It is intended to remain a living laboratory and a place for the continuous change and innovation. And so my goal is never to be finished with it, although we are now 90% built out, and this is over an 8 or 9 year period of slow money. So there is no bank loan. You know, it's all building on one tenant after another, getting a little bit more income, enough, okay, now we can hire another staff person, now we can buy a little bit more material, and kind of rolling that forward. And so it's a very different model.
Were there any surprise ventures that ended up being the most profitable or the most usable in terms of reusing waste?
That's a good question. So in terms of growth, I think the one I mentioned, closed loop farms, that started in the little thing, was kind of the most stunning growth, and really one of the more impressive ones. We've had plenty of failures of people that came in to do things and then realized that food business is about the hardest business there is. And you know, restaurants like to say every food business is one refrigeration failure away from bankruptcy. The margins are very, very tight, and so it's very, very difficult to make money making and selling food, especially when you're doing it on a small artisanal scale. And so I have been stunned by some of the failures and by some of the successes. And for the most part, everybody we have now is rock solid and doing very, very well. Even the indoor farms, which is a pretty big accomplishment, I think, because indoor farming is one of those things that was, you know, vertical farming was supposed to be the next giant thing in skyscrapers in Manhattan and whatever, which is a totally ridiculous idea and would never work. And it has to be optimized to the hilt in order for it to work. So, thank you. Yeah.
First of all, I'm loving everybody's questions.
Yeah.
Albert Bates and Kathleen Braidwood are out with a new book about biochars.
Uh-huh.
And so they're looking not just at the ones that would go for agriculture, but ones that have industrial uses. They're
Mhm.
using biosolids to create materials that can be used in concrete, that kind of
Mm-hmm.
thing.
Mm-hmm.
So with that as sort of the base, you have been so visionary to date, and I have a feeling that your visions haven't stopped. Does this kind of thing fit into what you're thinking is in the next few years?
Yeah, it does. I mean, we actually have hold on, now what's it called? You make gas, or char, well, whatever. We have one of those things. And we have a lot of things. And it does fit in because any of those waste streams are worth looking at. Even when it's just minuscule amounts, it's worth looking at, because if we can demonstrate a new model for using even just small slices of it. You know, the wonderful thing about cities is the proximity of uses. And there are so many ways. This used to happen a lot more, and actually the stockyards in Packingtown was known for, they used to say everything but the squeal. They used absolutely everything that came out of a hog or a cow. And we kind of lost that to a certain extent with rules and regulations that separated everything and put it in separate boxes. And so what we really need to do is connect in a clean way, but we need to reconnect everything. And so biochar is absolutely one of those things. Mm-hmm.
Are you or any of the other organizations in the plant looking for volunteers?
Yes. Why, yes, certainly. We need help with all sorts of things, from engineering and design to hauling bricks and helping with tours. So there are a slew of different things. And if you go to bubblydynamics.com or insidetheplant.com, you can send an email, info@, bubblydynamics.com. We'll get you there, and then we can connect the right people. But absolutely, yeah. Mm-hmm.
You talked a little bit about the importance of community engagement. I'm wondering if you could speak a little bit more about how you really listen to your community and learn about their wants and how to support them.
Sure. So It is, like I said, it's really difficult. And you know, what does back of the yards want and need? It needs a couple things. It needs jobs. There's a highly skilled workforce that is, you know, within walking distance of the building. And so I think the number one way to get on the community's good side is to make good jobs. You know, that's a big thing. But from the teaching side, making sure that our doors are thrown open, and actually tours from anybody from 60609, our zip code, are free. And we've been seeing more and more traffic in the tap room for Wine or Beer Company from the neighborhood, which is absolutely wonderful. And while people are in, they can see various exhibits around and hopefully learn something. The farmers market is another good way to bring people in. We do a certain amount of outreach and also work with the Peace and Education Coalition and host meetings for them, which is a key organization in back of the yards. But it's hard. It's hard. It's harder than it sounds. Yeah.
What do you think big food companies can or should be doing to become more sustainable?
Well, they should stop greenwashing everything first off and admit where they actually get their stuff from. And there are a lot of things that they can do. I mean, the local sourcing primarily, better labor practices. You know, if you've read The Jungle, you read about how horrible conditions were in meatpacking plants in 1904. Well, it's no different now. Actually, it's worse because the chemicals that are being used in those plants and the speed of the lines is way faster. And again, it's immigrants coming in and they are being abused in terrible ways. And that has actually literally gotten worse. And so fair labor practices would be an enormous piece of it. Fair sourcing, local sourcing, keeping the chemicals out of food. Those are all things that big companies need to be doing, and they need to stop pretending that they are small local businesses. I mean, so one of the trends is buying up small companies, and so it's got good and bad to it. You know, there's a lot of different ways to look at that, but ultimately a small company will employ locally and will care more about the quality of the food that they produce. And so, as you can tell, I'm not a big fan of large companies.
Have you been able to share your work with any elected officials?
Oh yeah.
In Chicago or Illinois?
Oh yeah, all the time. We invite people in constantly, and everyone from Department of Buildings people, lots of aldermen come through, mayor, and state officials, and so we try very hard to try to share what we're doing, because ultimately, again, we're trying to reach those very people and show them that there's another way to do things, and they are often very surprised by what we're doing, and that's really key. Yep.
Do you have any thoughts on how this expands, this concept, how other people get started at it, or how to communicate, toolkits, any ideas on beyond elected officials? How
Yeah.
others get involved?
Absolutely. Actually, Toolkit is a perfect example. So one of the things that we're doing is we're building an online toolkit with examples of projects that we've done, like the brine tank, we call it, which is a 10,000-gallon tank that they used to make salt brine in to inject into ham. And so we connected it to building roof drains, and then we added a pickle tank and another giant fiberglass tank, all with a big equalizing pipe, and we gather about 20,000 square feet of roof area and then pressurize and pump that water to indoor and outdoor farms, for instance. So that's one of the toolkit projects. The wetland, gray water reuse, our smart metering system, which was written by Ann Wood. She's our in-house software engineer that is pushing data to the web in real time for every electrical panel in the building, every water meter, every gas meter, so the tenants can log in and see their curves and stretch them out. And then we try to visualize energy consumption. So we have a light fixture that throbs at different rates and changes color from white, yellow, orange to angry red when we're really using a lot of power, for instance. So those are the kinds of things that we're putting into the toolkit, which isn't built yet, but we're writing the pieces right now and taking the pictures. And so that's one of the ways. But the concept of the replicable model is huge here, because we need to share all that information, and we need to demonstrate that you can actually save money by doing this. Or you can download the software for free that we wrote, for instance. So we try to do everything open source as much as possible. One more question.
I'm curious if you've seen anything replicated in other cities, and if there's any way that we as civilians can help.
Sure. The question is, have we seen anything replicated in other cities, and is there any way that civilians can help? And so, yes, yes, we have. And there's been a fair amount of attention to what we're doing, especially in the Netherlands, who are already way ahead of us in terms of controlled environment agriculture and this sort of thing. But they're listening, they're paying attention, and they're writing books, and they're writing magazine articles and whatnot. And so I think that one of the things that civilians can do is to talk about it, talk about other ways that are outside of the status quo of doing things, talk about small, and to vote with your dollars by supporting small businesses is a big part of it, because these things cannot exist without that kind of a structure. I mean, all of the little things help. Rain barrels, all of that does add up. Hybrid cars don't help. Anyway, they're still cars. So, all right, I think we're out of time. Sounds like.
Yes, but before you go, let's give a round of applause to
Oh.
Jen.
Thank you.